Well, the other key thing though about this thing is that Warren would gradually over time average everyone out, so that, as firms go out of business, new ones come in, everyone would be paying the same dollar amount, which is calculated as like the average cost of an employee's health.
Same dollar amount per worker.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. And so initially it would be calculated based on, what the company's actual expenses are. But, you run the clock forward 5 or 10 years and pretty much every company is paying the same head tax, as you were saying before, regardless of, what their employees are making or anything like that.
Right. And so like this gets us to like the post that Matt Brunig put up, which basically points out that like if you're charging every employer a dollar amount, like a head tax, which is a dollar amount per worker, that's actually more regressive than charging a percentage of the employee's income, because like the percentage, like if it's a percentage, well, if the employee makes less income, then the dollar amount created by that same percentage will be smaller. But if it's the same dollar amount, then the burden becomes bigger for people who are making less, and presumably is like a bigger hiring disincentive and a bigger pay disincentive for the employers who are employing like, lower wage workers. So it's going to hit those lower wage workers harder.
Yeah. Can you tease that out? So it's what the employer will do because of that situation that will affect workers, that makes it more because on its face, it sounds like the workers don't have to go out of pocket. Whereas with Bernie's plan, there's a tax coming from their paycheck, but that's not so simple, right? Yeah,
partly. Right. I mean, Brunig calculates that Warren's, payment would end up being in the ballpark of $9,500. And so if you are running a minimum wage business, some sort of Walmart type of place, a full-time worker on making minimum wage, which is still $7.25 an hour, if I'm not mistaken, you're making like $15,080 a year. And so this would be an almost 63% payroll tax on that particular employee. And, you could zoom out to the other side of the income ladder for somebody, making like $50,000 or something like that. The tax, which is not, it's not a payroll tax, but in terms of behaving like a payroll tax on an individual basis, you're talking about like a 7% or something like a much smaller payroll tax.
And that's why it's regressive.
Yeah. I mean, it's frankly like especially the way, like there's a way to solve this. There's a way to solve the problem, to say, like, I understand what she's doing there, to say like, okay, we just want to take this money that's going into the pipeline of the maw of all these insurance companies, and we want to redirect that. But then, what do we want to do afterwards? And Warren says that, we're gonna literally make it into an actual head tax, and that's just a really dumb way to do it. I think, Bernie's got a payroll tax and then an income tax. And the nice thing about an income tax, at least in the U.S. context, is that you have your big old standard deduction, which is now between $12,000 and $24,000. So you don't even pay any income tax on your first, 12 to 24,000, depending on your family structure.
Does he have a standard deduction for the payroll tax as well? I could be wrong about that. Yeah.
I don't think so. At least it's not as currently constituted. Okay. But at any rate, so that's just like a much more, frankly, technocratically sensible way to do it, like having a 63% tax on minimum wage employees is just a really silly, way to set it up. And I personally am convinced that if it came time to actually write a bill, that President Warren would not actually support.
And we can get to that
so.
in a minute, but I just want people to understand what's on offer and what the differences mean and why they matter.
Yeah.
But go ahead, Jeff. Yeah.
I was going to say, there's one other aspect of this I just wanted to highlight, which is like, to zoom out for a second, this actually touches on like kind of one of those problems that people like haven't really discussed in a great deal with Medicare for All, but that you would need to like, grapple with, which is that, again, let's just say we pass Medicare for All, ignore the financing side entirely, ignore any raising taxes or anything like that. Everybody's got health care now. So it used to be that all these companies were paying these premiums to give their workers health care. Now that Medicare for All is in place, what happens to all that money? Well, like you would hope that it goes to the workers and everybody's paychecks go up because like now that money that was going to those premiums is now free to go into everybody's wages. But like, where money goes in firms is all a matter of bargaining power and leverage. So like that money could get snatched up by shareholders instead. So like Ryan said earlier, you kind of have to, exactly what happens to that money flow depends on labor market conditions. So like one thing that like is to worry about with Medicare for All is like, are we introducing it in conditions of tight labor markets and unionization and all that kind of thing? And so another way to think about what Warren's doing is that she's essentially trying to make sure that money doesn't get away, right? She's trying to grab it and like make sure that like once Medicare for All gets passed, that money that's going to those premiums doesn't get spit out to shareholders. It gets shot over to the federal government to keep helping workers. The problem, as it kind of like came out in what Ryan was talking about, is that, well, paying these premiums is really expensive. It's a big cost for employers to provide it. And so Warren's like averaging out, essentially like she's trying to like mimic the status quo, but she actually winds up importing that cost burden onto low wage employers, which is like, I think kind of like the key problem.